Mama. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Picture this. You're a mama pursuing a PhD and you've just managed to carve out a precious 30 minutes to work on your thesis or dissertation, depending on what country you're in, right? Your fingers hover over the keyboard and unfortunately, your mind begins to race with doubt. Is it even worth starting? I can't possibly make any meaningful progress in such a short time. If this scenario sounds all too familiar, you are not alone and you are in the right place, because in today's episode, we are going to discuss all of this. What if I told you that these small pockets of time could be actually the key to unlocking your purposeful success? Today, we're diving into why consistency trumps speed in the marathon of thesis or dissertation writing, and how embracing this mindset could revolutionize your scholarly mama journey. Stick around to discover how you can turn those stolen moments into a finished thesis and learn the strategies that could transform your own path to doctoral success. We're going to get into all of this in today's episode. So get comfortable. Let's get into it. But before we do, I want to just say welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time, welcome. As I said, make yourself comfortable. This is all about feeling at home. I want you to feel completely at home and at ease in this space. This is just you and me, and we're talking all about why consistency matters more than speed for scholarly mamas. So as I mentioned, that scenario that I shared at the beginning of the episode is not unfamiliar, I'm sure. I am sure we have all had those moments where we, with best intentions, sit down with a little bit of time to work on something and we just seem to freeze. Like we can't make any progress. We're stuck. Nothing is flowing. We are going nowhere fast, right? We've all had this. That little bit of time is probably the only time we had in that busy day amongst all the other things that we're juggling and amongst all the other hats that we wear to focus on this thesis writing. And yet, we cannot seem to produce the goods. We just cannot seem to produce the goods. Progress is going nowhere. Progress is at an all-time low, right? Now, I know you don't have to look very far online to see people talking about, writing your PhD thesis fast and how quick you can do it. And they can help you do it in 3 weeks and this kind of madness. Well, this is not going to be that kind of episode, because here we as scholarly mamas, we keep it real. We are very realistic about our expectations and the expectations that we set for ourselves. And also our standard is very high. We want to produce good work and finish well, but we're not going to do that at the cost and expense of the things that matter to us. So I wrote my thesis, as I mentioned in previous episodes, the bulk of it I wrote in 16 months, alongside working, mothering, real life, and other things. And so for me, it wasn't really about the speed at which I could write my thesis, but more it was about can I do this and can I do it well alongside everything else, of course? And so that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. And you'll notice that this isn't about speed as much as it is about doing the thesis justice, but also how you can actually achieve that while you're juggling so many other hats. So one of the things that I want to kind of start off by demystifying, if you will, is this idea of speed in academic writing, because there's so many misconceptions around productivity, what it means to be productive. For lots of people, productivity is about getting things done quickly, utilizing every minute of the day to just really kind of push through, push forward, getting things done, getting the outcomes. And I think there's a space for being efficient in being productive. But I think that for me, it's really about purposeful productivity, sustainable productivity, productivity that doesn't burn you out, because there's no point being productive and getting all of the outcomes and the accolades and the titles if you are burnt out at the end of it. So that's not what we are about here. We are all about purposeful, sustainable productivity. And I know that in typical academic culture or in many PhD experiences, there is a pressure to produce work quickly, ignoring the realities of academic work. Academic work is slow work, right? When I reflect on clinical practice and the outcomes that you may experience day to day, that day-to-day satisfaction and closure of seeing this amount of patients and really, feeling like you've helped people and you've got them somewhere, you've done a good job. With academic work, that kind of satisfaction is more long-term, right? You don't get that day-to-day closure that you would necessarily in some other types of work. And so really being in this for the long haul is a hallmark of academic work. It really takes time. It takes time to think. It takes time to conceptualize. It takes time to make sense of things. So academic work is not fast work by nature. Academic work by its nature is slow work, right? And so those expectations of fast-paced, record-breaking outcomes at breakneck speed it's a bit of a mismatch from what it is that we're actually doing and actually trying to achieve. And also, speed alone does not guarantee success. So doing your PhD faster doesn't mean that you are any more qualified or any more deserving of your success, of your titles, of your accolades. And it definitely doesn't mean that somehow your PhD is of a higher quality than somebody else. It doesn't mean that. Speed doesn't mean quality in academic work. So while there is, yes, there's a timeline, you can't work on your PhD forever. There are time constraints and resource constraints around what you need to do and how, the fact that you need to get this work done, funding constraints, all kinds of constraints, right? But at the same time, we need to separate speed from quality because they're not the same thing. Let's now talk then about why consistency is more important than speed. So consistency for me is less about pace and more about momentum, more about showing up for yourself, showing up for your goals in a regular, repeated way. So this isn't about racing down the racetrack towards the goal, but this is more about establishing a sustainable pace at which you progressively move closer and closer to your goal. For me, that is what consistency is. Now, I consider myself a very consistent person in most aspects of my life, not in everything. And I know I am not perfectly consistent, but for the most part, if I have a goal, I work consistently towards that goal. So for me, I may set myself a timeline. It's going to be a realistic timeline. It's not going to be a timeline that is going to give me unrealistic amounts of pressure and burn me out, but it's going to be in relation to the other things I have going on in my life, in relation to what I think is manageable for me, in relation to what I have the capacity for at that time. So once I've set that goal, once I've set that timeline, I will slowly but surely move my way towards the goal. Now, one of the real benefits of being consistent and taking a consistent approach towards the goal is that momentum that you establish gives you the motivation to keep going, number one, but it also reduces the overwhelm of pursuing that goal as well. So you are able to achieve and reach your goals without the overwhelm, without burning out, and also in a way that is well paced and in a way that is, flexible enough to adapt to changing environments and changing circumstances. So I know that as scholarly mamas, we do face challenges in reaching our goals and working towards our goals. So we're pursuing scholarly goals, we're pursuing, academic goals, and we have limited time. We have limited time available to work towards these goals. We've got competing priorities. We've got our kids. We've got our partners, our spouses. We have a life outside of these scholarly pursuits. However, we still want to achieve those goals, and rightly so. We deserve to achieve those goals. I say to people all the time, just because you are a mama doesn't mean you cannot do a PhD. And just because you're doing a PhD doesn't mean that your family doesn't come first. The two are not mutually exclusive. So my thought process is that yes, I am pursuing this goal, but I need to be realistic in the time I have available and be aware of my priorities in those pursuits as well. Another challenge that we face as scholarly mamas in pursuing our goals is that we feel so guilty when we feel like we are not doing enough. So going back to that original analogy of having just 30 minutes to work on something, it's hard. It's hard to feel like that is enough. And you've got people, you're surrounded by other colleagues or other people who don't have the responsibilities that you have, and they're able to really pour themselves hours and hours, days, nights, weekends, whatever, into their work. And here you are putting in your little hour to 45 minutes of work because you've got to go and get your kids from school or something. So naturally, we face those challenges. We feel so guilty about not being able to pour the same number of hours daily into our thesis writing, just simply not having the capacity to be able to do that. And so, having to start and stop and start and stop and go through these repeated start and stop cycles can feel like it's having a huge impact on our progress, because we sit down, we've got 30 minutes, we've got an hour, we sit down and we spend the entire time planning what we were going to work on in that time. And then the time is up and we haven't actually achieved anything, or we procrastinate, clean the desk and all these other things. We're easily distracted and we're not actually making any progress. So how do we cultivate that consistency as we are pursuing our goals? So the first thing I would say is we've all had those moments where we thought we don't have time, we don't have enough time to make any meaningful progress in a particular area. But I think one of the things for me with that is it feels like, our thesis feels like an elephant, right? It's a huge undertaking. It's climbing Mount Everest, whatever big challenge you can think of. Eating the elephant. And no, we are not eating elephants around here. This is just for the purposes of the analogy. So whether that is eating the elephant or climbing Mount Everest, swimming across the ocean, like whatever that big challenging task is, that is your thesis, right? This monster that we have to keep feeding. And when we think of it that way, it feels unachievable, unattainable. There's no way we're ever going to swim across the ocean. There's no way we're ever going to get to the top of Mount Everest. There's no way that we're ever going to eat this entire elephant. So it feels unachievable. And I've said it time and time again, the bigger the goal feels, the more unattainable it feels. And so the way around that, which I have found very, very helpful, is to break that goal down. Taking that really big mammoth of a goal and breaking it down into little mini goals, into little micro goals, so that as you achieve those little mini or micro goals, you can see that tangible progress. Now, it's not even just about breaking the goal down. it's also about breaking the time that you are making available for that goal down as well. So if you are realistic and honest with yourself, you don't have 8 hours today to write an entire section in one of your chapters. You don't have 8 hours to do that. And so looking at your calendar, the task is 8 hours. The big task is 8 hours. You haven't got 8 hours. So what are you going to do? You don't want to not make any progress. You still want to do something. And so you break not just the task down, but the time that you have allotted to work on the individual sections of that task. So if the task was to write chapter 1, then you break that down into, I'm going to write section 1.1.3, for example, of chapter 1 in the time I have available. So again, it's really not just breaking down the task, but also breaking down the time. So for example, maybe you only have 15 minutes, maybe ideally you'd love an ideal world with no kids, no responsibilities. You love to have 2 hours, but you only have 15 minutes. How can you make use of that 15 minutes? Right? How can you actually make use of that 15 minutes? So now going back to the idea of consistency, it isn't even just about, breaking down the task, breaking down the time. It's about how can I show up for myself to get this particular task done in the time I have available each day. So how can I show up for myself 15 minutes a day, for example? What little section of my thesis can I work on for just 15 minutes a day to work towards that goal of finishing chapter 1, finishing, whatever. So really breaking down the task, first of all, breaking down the time, second of all, and then breaking the day up so that every day you're able to pour just a few minutes into that goal. Now, I don't know about you, but if something isn't on my calendar, it doesn't get done. So this isn't just about breaking down the task and breaking down the time and scheduling the consistency over X amount of days, but it's also about actually writing it down, actually documenting that in your calendar, giving yourself that accountability so that when you look at that calendar, there is no doubt in your mind that you are showing up for that particular task. So far, we have introduced the idea of the importance of consistency and why consistency matters more than speed, particularly for scholarly mamas when you're writing your thesis. Now, when I initially recorded this episode, I recognized as I was recording it, there was quite a lot to pack into this. And I have decided to split this episode into 2 parts. And so this is part 1. I invite you to come back next week and listen to the continuation of this episode. I promise you, you will not want to miss it. We really get so deep into this because really the goal here is to support you in finishing well and doing so in a way that doesn't compromise the things that matter to you. And so I want to get deeper into why consistency matters more than speed, because I know that this is a huge challenge for scholarly mamas. This is a huge challenge for anyone who's doing a PhD, but particularly for people who are really managing quite a lot of things in the background of the PhD thesis. And so next week, we're going to go even deeper into this topic. Please tune in next week and listen to the second half of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed what we've discussed today, what we've skimmed the surface of today. And I know that you'll get so much value out of next week's episode, which has already been recorded and scheduled. It's just that I didn't want to pack it all into one because it's quite a lot to kind of consume at once. So make sure you tune into next week's episode. And until next time, Mama, as always, I'm sending you so much love and so much gratitude. And if you've enjoyed being here, you enjoy listening to this podcast on a regular basis, please do leave a kind review on your favorite podcast app, wherever you listen to these episodes, so that the algorithm can share this episode and this podcast with others who may also be on the journey of scholarly motherhood. So until next time, as always, like I said, sending you bucket loads of gratitude and love. Take care, Mama. Speak next week. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on my free training called the PhD with Purpose Maminar. When you join us inside Scholarly Mamas Explore, you'll get access to this free training and so much more. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.